Hello everyone and welcome to our new episode. Let's review the latest interview by Tucker Carlson with regard to the Iran war, how it's going to unfold in the future and the possibility of a nuclear war.
So where does this war go? I should just say, for those who aren't familiar with your bio, you spent 20 years working for the Defense Department, 10 active, 10 as a contractor, I think that's right? Working a lot of the time on missiles and missile defense. So would say you're literally an expert on that subject. And our munition stock is like a big factor in how this goes going forward. So where does this war go, do you think?
You know, it's hard for me to imagine. We were talking about this beforehand about how I'm always just hopelessly naive and optimistic when it comes to all these things. I was the guy, full admission before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, who was being like, no, I don't think they'll do it. That would be crazy.
I said that on TV, unfortunately.
Same thing as we were building up all of our munitions for this attack on Iran. I was the one saying, oh, it just doesn't make any sense. You know, just from a...
It is unbelievable that Americans actually did not expect this to happen because aside from them, everyone else on the planet was expecting this. The Iranians, even those against the government, those who are pro the government, the Russians, the Chinese, the Arabs, everyone knew it would happen. And there are several major reasons for it. But I'm going to talk about two of them for you right now. The first one is the Thucydides trap. I've been talking about this for at least 3 years. Thucydides trap is a theory in the international relations. And it says when a rising great power is threatening to replace the position of a ruling great power, the possibility of war is almost inevitable. So it means that, for example, when a rising power is closing the gap with a ruling power, there would be a time that the ruling power thinks after 1 or 2 years, the ruling power would be equal or less powerful than the rising power. And the ruling power has already done everything except war to control and contain the rising power without any result. So for this reason, the only way they see to contain the rising power and to keep their position as the hegemon is to wage a war. That's what is happening right now. But for the United States, the situation is a bit more complicated because we're not talking about only one great rising power, but two. Russia is also a great rising power, and a few rising middle powers, especially Iran, who are challenging the United States with all their power. So for this reason, the United States had simply no other choice. Either they have to accept this fact that they are no longer a hegemon, they are just another power in the world like other countries, and they have a share like others do, or they have to confront their rivals. They did it with Russia. Russia is now stuck in Ukraine and Europe. They tried very much in recent 2 and 3 years to do the same to Iran, but they couldn't. They tried very hard to force Iran to create some kind of situation where Iran invades Azerbaijan, and before that they forced Iran to invade Afghanistan. They wanted to force Iran to do something like Russia did, but Iran didn't play along. So for this reason, they had to finally start the war themselves and put all the masks aside, the democracy, human rights, everything, and start the war themselves. So Russia is stuck. They tried to bring down Iran because the last station is China, and everyone knows that. After Russia and Iran, it would be the China's turn. So, so far, it has not worked because Russia now has the upper hand in Ukraine. And if Russia wins the war in Ukraine or gets the concession that it wants, then Russia would come out of the war more powerful than before. And Iran is in the same place. Iran has come out of the war so far more powerful. We don't know what could happen in the future. So the origin of this Thucydides trap goes back to the conflict or rivalry between Sparta and Athens. Thucydides is the name of an ancient Greek historian. And the second reason is Israel. I don't say Netanyahu because even if Netanyahu was not in the office, another one would have done the same too, because everyone knows that the world is in a chaotic phase, I can call it. And when each time the world is in a transition and chaotic era, nations that have a powerful economy and a powerful military would try to expand their borders and to gain more power and to project their power, at least in their region. And that's what Israel and other countries like Iran, like Turkey are now trying to do. So all these nonsense about in nuclear Iran and all these things are just excuses. Israel wants to realize its dream of the greater Israel and become the hegemon, the sole power of the Middle East. And if Iran even gives them its nuclear program on a silver plate, they will go for the next excuse. The human rights, I don't know, the ballistic missiles, the economy, the oil, everything. So it's just, a power game, a game of thrones, I can call it in a way. And there has been no better time and no better president, Donald Trump, for Israel to carry on with this plan after more than 3 decades, to start this war and to contain and destroy Iran and to become the only power in the Middle East. So these 2 reasons show that it was obvious that this war would happen. And I'm not even limiting this war to Donald Trump and Netanyahu. I think other presidents and prime ministers would have done so.
Technical standpoint, from a logistical standpoint, this doesn't make any sense because we're not going to invade Iran. Iran knows we're not going to invade Iran. I'm doing it again, by the way, right there. But this was my thinking. And so there are, knowing those things, there are just certain limitations to what we can do in a standoff war, meaning a war where we're mostly launching munitions from outside of Iran's borders for fear of their own air defense network and flying our own manned aircraft over them. People have this idea, I think, if a missile hits this building that we're in, that's going to be really bad news for us. The people across the street, they'll probably be fine. This is not, these things are not nuclear weapons. You're not going to level a civilization, as Donald Trump keeps threatening, using standoff weapons like that. And so,
honestly speaking, nobody anticipated such an uncoordinated and chaotic behavior and fiasco from the US military. On top of that, the world, had no idea that the US military would deplete their ammunition reserves so rapidly. And this was kept a secret from the world. But now everything is spiraling out of control because everyone now knows the truth. And it is also, as he mentioned, very important to notice that the impact of missiles and drones are limited. Because sometimes I hear why Iran is not destroyed, because America and Israel, they realized more than 23,000 aerial attacks on Iran in just 40 days. It means more than 600 attacks a day. That's a lot. But if you go to a big city like Tehran right now, you might not see even one impact of a missile or drone in this city because the country is vast and the impact of these drones and missiles are limited. Also, I hear sometimes people say why Iran says that they have invaded successfully Israel and US bases in the region, but Israel is not destroyed and the US bases are not. In some of these US bases, they have more than in just one base in the region, they have more than 100 shelters and ammunition depots. So you don't expect, each missile and drone can destroy 1 or 2 shelters or depots. That's it. I mean, you don't expect to destroy all of these bases and a whole nation in just a few months of war.
Knowing that and having a rough idea, it's been a while since I've been in the game, but having a rough idea of what our stockpiles are, of what's involved with, fighting a long distance war like that, where our bases that are in theater are under assault and mostly not usable, it makes the logistical element extremely difficult. And so, one of our ships is out there. Maybe it gets shots off at 8 missiles, and then it's got to take 2.5 weeks to go reload its missiles and come back. It's just something that was not sustainable. And it's one of the reasons that I just thought, this is crazy. I don't think they're going to do this because it just makes no sense. And as we saw, it made even less sense than I thought, because one of the things that...
Now we understand that if Iran really wanted to sink one of US Navy ships or aircraft carriers, they actually could, because they could just fire endless numbers of cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, drones, these unmanned suicide boats, and also torpedoes at the same time, and overwhelm the ship, and that's it. But if they haven't done so, that's because they just don't want to escalate things to a level to force the United States to even harsher, reactions, and to force them to somehow attack Iranian infrastructure. Iran is actually trying to respond in a limited way.
Those of us who are on the technical side of missile defense understood for a long time that the general public, and honestly a lot of government and even military officials, I think, like high-level military officials, didn't understand. Because I think that whereas certain aspects of the data might have gotten to them, the narrative that got to them was very often rose-colored, in terms of what our actual capabilities were. And about a week or so into the war with Iran, I'm watching all these videos, just crazy, like the footage we get out of these wars now. And you'll see a ballistic missile coming in, and you'll see a volley of 2, volley of 4, or 2 volleys of 2, go up and engage the missile. Very often the missile would land and blow up somewhere where it was headed. But then after about 2 weeks, about 10 days, 2 weeks, and then from there on, I started seeing all these videos of a ballistic missile coming in, and it was just, we would flood the sky with interceptors, 8, 10 interceptors for every incoming. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, well, first, this kind of makes more sense. Like at first, I was knowing the effectiveness of ballistic missile defense systems, and we have the best in the world, by the way, but it's just a technically difficult thing to achieve. Knowing the limitations of it, I was surprised at first that I was seeing volleys of 2 and 4 going up. Once they started to get up to volleys of 8, 10, 12 missiles per, I said, well, this makes more sense. And they would come out and say, we're having a success rate of 97%. We're shooting down 97% of incoming. It's like, well, yeah, but you're shooting 10 interceptors at every one of them.
Now we realize, the United States has been trying to control or to intercept all the Iranian missiles. And sometimes, as he claims, they have been shooting more than 10 missiles, let's say Patriot missiles, in order to intercept just one Iranian missile. The most expensive Iranian missile is worth around $300,000, and most of their missiles are around $100,000, $150,000. And 10 Patriot defensive missiles are roughly around $125 million. And that even might not intercept that one Iranian missile. So now we understand why the US is copying the Iranian Shahed drones, because economy is the basic pillar of any war. And the Americans know it, but it seems that the Arabs, especially Saudi Arabia, still don't know what is happening, because I read in the news a few days ago that the Saudis have signed a new contract with the Americans to purchase 720 Patriot defensive missiles, PAC-3, for around $9 billion. So first of all, now we all understand that the United States is running out of these defensive missiles themselves. So the United States is now prioritizing its needs over anyone else's. And as we read in the news, it takes like 2 years for them to refill the stockpile of these missiles. So the Saudis are now paying $9 billion to the United States in order to get these missiles, like in 3 years, in 4 years, in 5 years, who knows. While these missiles don't help them, actually. You know, firing 10 of these missiles to intercept one Iranian missile. So Iran could easily use 70 and 80 missiles in order to deplete this ammunition. $9 billion in 1 or 2 days. That's it. I mean, that's crazy, because why don't you just try to reconciliate with Iran? Because Iran has been waiting for this for so long. Just shake hands and end this. Why don't you understand the situation? Because it's really strange. And on the other side, the Iranians have been preparing themselves with this war for more than 3 decades. So they have very huge underground facilities and infrastructure to refill their stockpiles. We don't know how many missiles they have, but maybe thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, who knows? But the most important point is that even during the war, they were making new missiles and new drones. So they are now in a better shape. And most importantly, Iranians don't need to use their most expensive long-range ballistic missiles with maneuverable warheads in order to attack Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is pretty close to Iran, so Iran can use some of its smallest and cheapest drones and missiles in order to deplete that stockpile of $9 billion. So I just don't get it. It means that the Arabs, especially Saudis, are not still understanding, comprehending what is happening on the ground.
And so, you're shooting it down, but at what cost? And when that started to happen, then I realized that this thing is way more irrational than I even thought at the beginning. And there's no way that this can be a protracted war, because we just don't have that many, and we don't have a defense industrial base that allows us to sort of ramp that up real quick. You know, this is something, these systems nowadays are so proprietary and so specialized and high tech. You know, you can't, it's not like World War II where you can tell General Motors and Ford to start making tank parts.
Exactly.
This is something that even if you had the budget put aside, even if you had all of the resources you needed to build 5 more factories, we don't have the personnel to man those factories. We would have to get people that we have now to train up an entirely new workforce to build these things. It's just something that would take years under the best of circumstances. And so, honestly, I was surprised that it lasted as long as it did. And so,
the worst part for the United States is that Russia and China are watching. And you know, the Chinese have a very great capacity in building things. So if they are in a war like this, they won't deplete their ammunitions in a short period of time, and that's frightening. That's why I think the people in the United States must actually must see this war as the most frightening thing of their of this era, because this war has shown to the world their weakness.
I mean, the whole thing has been, it's been a disaster, not just for our relationships in the region. It's been a disaster just in a much broader strategic sense, because, if you look at Afghanistan, you look at Iraq, people say we lost those wars. And granted, what we found out in those wars was not that the U.S. military is incapable of achieving military objectives. We found out it's not the best tool to fight an embedded counterinsurgency.
Yes.
Fine. But I promise you that the Russians, the Chinese, all of our potential adversaries out there, potential peers, they still looked at the United States and they were like, yeah, but I don't know, in a real war, like, we just don't know what they can do. Now everybody knows. Everybody knows the sheen is off. They know what our not just our political limitations are, but what our technical and actual capabilities are. And that's going to reverberate as countries start to adapt their own geostrategic posture to what they now see are genuine limitations.
How long can this go on?
So I think the main consequence of this war for the United States is that if America cannot finish this war successfully, which at least right now it seems it will not be able to, then they would have to just accept that they are not a hegemon anymore, and they have to stop their expenses and warmongering. That's the end result.
How long can this go on?
I mean, it kind of depends, right? Like there seems to have been a shift recently where Iran realized, this is how it looks just from me as an observer, that Iran kind of realized that they were getting played a little bit by allowing things to die down in a tit for tat while we kind of catch our breath and let oil prices go back down and let bond yields fall a bit. And then we start again and they launch some in return. But then when we stop, they stop, kind of letting us set the pace and set the terms. And so it seems like they've adjusted a little bit to not letting us set the terms and set the pace to the extent that we had been before. And so if we had been allowed to just continue to do that, a tit for tat on our own terms at our own pace, I mean, we could probably, from a pure military standpoint, not talking about global oil reserves and stuff, we probably could have continued it for quite some time. If the Iranians, as it seems now, are wise to that, and they say, no, you're not going to get a break and rebuild your interceptor stockpile. While you do it, you're going to continue to spend those things. And then...
Right, Iran is forced not to give any time to the United States in order to rest or to catch its breath. But at the same time, it's a very dangerous game because Iran cannot escalate things or continue to escalate things against the United States in a way to give an excuse to Netanyahu and other warmongers in the United States to push Trump to even harsher attacks against Iranian infrastructure. But the Iranians are smart and they have been able so far to manage this pretty well.
I mean, things are going to come to a head very quickly, you know, and I say that with trepidation because it's so, our system, unfortunately, like the bravest thing that Donald Trump could do is to admit this was a mistake, pay some restitution to those girls' families, and get out of there. Stop doing it. This thing was, that would be an incredibly brave thing to do. It would honestly go a long way to making up for a lot of the things that he's done that I don't like. I would be amazed by it. But our political system is just not structured in a way that that's really even a possibility.
If there was a sane president in the office, he would have done so. But if there was a sane president in the office, this war would have not begun in the first place.
And so if we are backed into a corner where we're running out of stockpiles and the Iranians are aware of that and they're not going to take their foot off the gas pedal because they're afraid that if they do, that we're never going to stop, that we have to be forced to stop, that we could, take this to places that I think even most hawks who are in favor of the war would probably be uncomfortable with.
It has been obvious to me since day one that this was moving toward a nuclear exchange. I just thought that from the very beginning.
The really dark part about that, though, is it's not an exchange.
Well, exactly. Sorry, that's just a phrase.
Yeah, but how dark is that to even
Well, I don't know. We're assuming that there would be no response. I mean, there are a lot of other players in this,
right,
beyond just Iran. And there are a lot of countries with nuclear weapons, including Pakistan, and there's a lot could happen. But the use of nuclear weapons for the first time in 80 years, I thought that immediately. Do you think that's a possibility?
Man, I'll say it's certainly a possibility for the Israelis.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to imagine the American government doing it. But again, I'm always caught off guard by everything, no matter how many times I've been beaten over the head with a lesson. So it really depends. I put it this way. I think if the Israelis thought they could get away with it, if they thought that they could handle the geopolitical fallout they would have already done it a long time ago.
Oh, of course. Well, they've threatened it many times.
So Iran is still controlling the situation. In recent days, for example, we see that Iran doesn't invade American bases in the region because Iran knows how crazy some politicians could be on the other side of the planet, the Earth, I mean. But firstly, it's not easy for Israel to use a nuclear weapon against Iran because it has huge geopolitical ramifications, and we all know that. But let's say it escalates to that level. I think Iran certainly has some plans. Look, we all know that Iran has been preparing for this war for more than 3 decades, and they have made and built their weapons exactly based on each phase of this conflict. And we are seeing how effective their weapons are working because they have been building these weapons based on a plan, a long-term plan. So if they have been planning for this for more than 3 decades, I guess they have been also planning something for the end phase of it, which is a nuclear war. Unless these plannings all seem to be like irrelevant. Thank you so much.